gateway to the Middle East. MedTech opportunities in the United Arab Emirates, Saudi Arabia and beyond.
Hello everyone. Nice to see some familiar faces and nice to see some new faces who are hopefully interested in the Middle Eastern market. By means of introduction, my name is Rachel. I'm a healthcare media professional in the Middle East. I cover the Middle East and North Africa. And I have a confession to make. When we're kind of workshopping this title, it moved around a little bit. I personally still have an issue with it being gateway to the Middle East, because the Middle East, it's a huge, huge region, very nuanced. We have differences in territories. They're not all created equally. The GCC, which is the Gulf Cooperation Council, consists of the UAE, Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, Bahrain, Oman, Qatar, Kuwait as well. We've got the Levant, which is Lebanon, Jordan, Palestine, etc. We've also got North Africa, and the Maghreb, which is Egypt, Morocco, Algeria. Very different digital transformation journeys in healthcare, very different populations, very different money. So where is the money? Well, your gateway is the GCC. And we've got some amazing panelists with us today who are representing the UAE and the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. And what makes them stand out, obviously, so Marwan over here is Emirati. He's from the United Arab Emirates, so a great ambassador for the UAE anyway, but he has been with Dubai Science Park, which is a free zone in Dubai, and it facilitates entry into the Emirates or the wider UAE, and he'll be able to tell us more about this. I'm just giving a little bit of background. Dirk has been Dirk has been in the UAE for quite some time as well. His credentials include the Department of Health Abu Dhabi and the UAE Presidential Office. Now he's going it alone with a great team of people with Saydalah. Saydalah is Arabic for farmer. So that's another fun fact. And he's got a wide range of experience from the clinical side to the investment side. So these are two very well-versed gentlemen to be chatting to later if you'd like to connect. So that's enough of me waffling on, but right. I'm going to focus, for the sake of this argument, for the sake of this panel, I'm going to focus on the GCC, because this is arguably where the money's at. This is where the transformation journeys are quite advanced compared to, like, for example, the likes of Egypt. They are, moving forward, but again, very different populations. The UAE has ambition to be at the forefront of technology and medtech in the region. So Marwan, looking at the medtech industry, which is why we're here, what specific subsectors is Dubai currently trying to attract and build? Which startups are you looking for, and which startups are coming?
Thank you very much for that question. And it is true that there is a big transformation happening. And the reason for that transformation is because the governments, generally speaking, in the GCC want to do better for their citizens and for people who live there. They want a better healthcare system. They want people to have ease of access to healthcare. And they want people, obviously, to continue working and developing the economy. So healthcare is a pillar of how it makes people comfortable and basically have trust in the system. So it is very high on the agenda. Now, the question is, how do we do that? How do we develop that healthcare system? And medical technology is obviously one part of it. You need to have, the latest and greatest machines, digital, let's say, infrastructure, connecting hospitals, using technology for making decisions, etc. But that is only one part. You also need the human element, which is the doctors and the nurses who will be, and the technicians who will be using those tools, and also, connecting the dots to the university. How do we engage also the universities to be part of that investment which the government has put in? So if you look at a triple helix model, which is the industry, lots of investment, both multinationals and the government obviously subsidizing and providing lots of infrastructure that's available. And then you obviously need the academia or the universities to always develop and come up with new ideas. And I think that is what is quite unique about Dubai and the region.
And I think we're going to come to that part as well, the academia part, a little later, because local R&D is something we're quite keen on in the region, right? So, yeah. And in terms of, the areas of MedTech, the subsectors, devices, technology, pharma, digital pharmacies, like what's?
It's difficult for me to pick on one subsector because all of the sectors, in my opinion, are growing. So if you look at longevity, for example, digital health, pharma, biotechnology, all of those areas are growing. I mean, and what is driving that is growth in population. And, we are experiencing a massive growth in population, and I think we are still not stopping. There are so many plans, so many things to be developed, whether it's projects, etc. Not just in the UAE, but in the entire GCC. So all of those sectors will definitely grow with it. More people to live, more issues for sure. People wanting to live longer. Many people are choosing Dubai specifically to retire. So what are we doing with an aging population, for example? So I can't really pick on one sector, but I think maybe that's something we can talk about later. It is very important to validate whatever sector you're choosing. The market entry and the market access of it needs to be carefully studied before doing anything.
And you made a very valid point there about retirement, because we do have the retirement visa, there's the investor visa. A lot of people are moving to Dubai to live there or work out there. The digital nomad visa, and then they bring their parents who are enjoying the retirement life in Dubai as well. And I know Dubai and Abu Dhabi as well, they do really want to create a healthcare system that's sustainable, that's based on value-based model, precision medicine. There's the Emirati Genome Program as well, and they're envisioning a future where prevention before cure, right? So Dirk, obviously, I've mentioned your credentials before, the Department of Health, Abu Dhabi, UAE Presidential Office, and now in investment as well. So you've worked quite heavily across the GCC, the UAE, and also the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia and others. From your strategic view, what is the single biggest policy or economic driver, be it the push for value-based care, digital transformation, or new insurance models, that makes this vision a practical reality for non-GCC MedTech right now?
Yeah. I think the region, and talking about retirement, about population getting older, has a huge transformation in terms of healthcare delivery first, which is then underlined by technology. I mean, in the past, a very young population, you have more single episodes, so one surgery, young patient, everybody healthy, do the surgery, go home, that's it. But now, population getting older, chronic diseases play a more important role, so you come to a system of more chronic diseases, of more complex patients, and which also requires a different kind of healthcare, but also different kind of financing. So if you pay for each single episode, which we mostly do across the whole GCC, it's not sustainable in terms of cost. So you have to bundle, you have to take care of chronically ill patients with multiple diseases. Saudi, for example, are about to decentralize their hospitals, so they have low regional clusters. And very interesting, they have a capitation model in future. They will have, so it's not paying for each episode, but you get some thousand dirhams, whatever, for each patient, and you have to take care of the whole healthcare, which is very interesting, but also requires, and then we're talking about MedTech, requires processing of data. And I think that's one of the big trends beyond the devices and everything happening everywhere. Managing data, and we have a lot of data. You mentioned the genome project. We have Malafi in Abu Dhabi, a central patient record for the whole emirate. So richness of data, but then you need technologies to manage the data and to draw conclusions from what you have. I think that's one of the important, when it comes to technologies, I mean, we need the same technologies like everybody across the world, but in terms of specific, I think the data is our our asset, but also companies who can work with those data.
Yeah, I mean, over there in that region, they always make this joke like data's the new oil, right, of the Middle East. And it is true in the sense of data is going to be very valuable, and they're looking for companies that kind of utilize that data or you know, filter it down to the meaningful data that's going to serve patients across the region. And just referencing, you know, the speed at which we adopt things in the region in terms of the GCC, I'll use the pandemic as an example. I mean, I'm from the United Kingdom, I'm part Arab, but I mean, comparing the UK response to the pandemic versus the UAE's response, all I can say is I was glad to be in the UAE at the time, because it was, you know, and it just shows like how quick they were. And it just shows that when there's an idea and there's a need for an idea, how quick they were to adopt. And it was managed, and I feel it was managed much more efficiently, and even the restrictions were lifted quicker due to the acceleration in technology and the adoption of technology. Dirk, your investor hat, are you seeing the private capital follow these trends? You know, what market or recent deals tell you that this opportunity is real and accelerating? Because I know you're working on that at the moment.
Yeah, I mean, investing in something, you usually look at the second step, at least, at scaling. So, I mean, looking at some of the relatively small markets, maybe except Saudi Arabia, the other markets are relatively small. So whenever you invest in something, I mean, there may be some very specific things how to work with our, for example, our genome project in Abu Dhabi. However, it's a 10 million population in the UAE. So if you invest in something, I think you always have a global perspective. You start somewhere, but then you need to consider at least the bigger markets in GCC, which is the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. We also look at India. So I think it's always a kind of global perspective, because you need bigger markets to be sustainable in the long run. So for us, it's more about topics which are also scalable across the region and beyond.
So scalable and knowing what they're dealing with, knowing the type of data, knowing what's needed in the region, that's probably the foundation of it all.
And I mean, what I learned from a long career in healthcare, sometimes it's also a question of timing. There's great innovation, but bad luck if you're 10 years too early with what you have. So maybe we are the only ones in the world who really have this very sophisticated data infrastructure. So it doesn't help if you invest in something which is performing very well in our region, but there are not only a few countries which have the same infrastructure. So it's also about timing, investing in things that are only helpful in the local markets right now doesn't make sense if you look at a global perspective and at investing. So timing is important in healthcare. Sometimes fancy sport cars and then back to the region don't help 50 years ago when you only have sand in the region. So there are certain things that timing is important also in investment. So what is the global perspective, which is sometimes more important than the local fit of certain things?
Oh, absolutely. And what you mentioned about the infrastructure, etc., and what I mentioned very earlier is that the region, nuances of the region, very different, very, very different territory. I would say in the GCC, and correct me if I'm wrong, I would say UAE and KSA are kind of, they go back and forth in terms of their acceleration. I think that's followed by Qatar, because they're leading, I would say, in precision medicine, the precision medicine area, Sidra, and the Qatar Foundation is doing very well. Then it's Qatar, Bahrain, Oman is probably catching up. Is that the right split? Okay. So the GCC varies, and those are the Gulf countries with the smaller population. It varies compared to the wider Middle East, like I said, the Levant and North Africa. So let's talk about mistakes. Because a lot of people come in, no hate, but a lot of companies, as a media professional, when I'm reporting on the media industry, they come in, don't know much about the region. They just assume, we're great in the UK, and therefore we're great here. No, if you know your region. So, Marwan, what is the single biggest mistake you see non-Middle Eastern companies make when they're trying to enter the UAE? Because they come to you, I'm sure you receive many a pitch deck every week.
Day.
Yeah, every day. What are the mistakes that make you go, oh, this is frustrating?
So I think the biggest mistake I see is that, for example, if someone has a product or a solution to a problem that exists in the region, they would assume that their product or solution would work. Because let's take diabetes as an example. Yes, it is a problem in the GCC. 20+% of the population do suffer from diabetes. So this company would assume that because they are in that space, it would work because it has a sizable market. But what people underestimate is the way to market is as important. So who do you partner with? Is it the private sector? Do you go through the government, for example? There are so many ways, and it could be a combination. So that's one thing that I think people usually underestimate. And they would think, for example, it would take a month or two. It depends on how complicated that product is. Sometimes it takes a year or two. And the biggest fallout is because they haven't planned for a year or two. Then they would say, well, our budgets have run out and we need to go back. So that's, and because I'm not an expert in everything, it's very difficult for us to say, this is what you should do in oncology, this is what you should do in diabetes, for example. It is really up to the company to do their homework and spend as much time as they need to have confidence and then start. And one of the things that we do to kind of mitigate that is to provide a very affordable and easy way to start. So we say, well, since you're still exploring and finding out your way, why don't you have a very small setup that is not expensive, easy to set up, and explore while you're still at that baby step. And once they have that foundation, and then they can obviously grow and expand.
And I see Dirk nodding away in agreement. So it's the knowing that it's not a one-size-fits-all approach globally and translating to the GC audience, doing your research, doing your homework, a bit of luck, knowing when to launch or when to enter. Dirk, what else? What other mistakes do you see when you're reviewing pitches?
I think, first of all, I'm fully agreeing with Marwan. It's really understanding the region, the country, which also requires more than a post box in being really in the country or in the region, if you talk about the wider region. The other thing is, I feel there's some, even when it comes to investment, companies who are not very successful in their home country, so then run away and try somewhere else. That's what we also see when asking for example, for bigger investment from the UAE. And then you ask, and coming from the US, where you have a vibrant VC landscape, so why don't they get money in their home country? Sometimes you find out if you dig deeper. So I think it's really offering quality. It's not that this market is an emerging market anymore. Maybe it's emerging in terms of innovation and health tech, but it's a very sophisticated Saudi, UAE, Oman, very sophisticated healthcare system. So what they need to present is quality, and that's also something I sometimes feel it's not really the case in all the people who try to enter the region. And then, of course, being local, trying to, and there's some successful example, also startups I work with who really stay in the region, came to the region, even get investment from the region, which everybody thinks is hard to get. So I think it's really about local, but also offering the highest quality globally.
Another point that I want to add is, both Dubai and Abu Dhabi and also Saudi Arabia have done very large investments in healthcare. Companies like Mubadala, ADQ, PIF, we're talking hundreds of millions. Now, that doesn't mean that all other companies think the same. These are sovereign wealth fund backed companies who think 10 years, 20 years ahead and have very, very big budgets, right? So it doesn't mean that everyone else have the same ticket size or think as long-term as they do. So I think because, those investments make the news and make a very big splash, people make an assumption that, oh, it's easy to raise funds. The reality is it's not easy, because depending on what you're raising, whether it's a small ticket size or a mid-sized ticket size, you need to make sure that the investor you're talking to understands your business, your value proposition. And healthcare is not something that everybody understands. So it's, that awareness, I think, of what you're trying to solve is very important, and also going and speaking to the right people.
Of course, 100%. And when you were mentioning this as well, what came to mind was I'd seen an interview with the Saudi Minister of Health, His Excellency Fahd al-Jalajal, and he was talking in Arabic. He was talking to an audience, and he was saying, we welcome companies and we welcome startups, we welcome entrepreneurs to come and work in Saudi Arabia, but show us what's in it for us, which is valid, to be honest. Any country should be doing this. Show what's in it for us. Don't just say, oh, we're just going to come do this and then go. He wants research on the ground. And it's the same with the UAE. It's like, show what's in it for the population, what's in it for residents, how you can help the local communities. Dirk, comparing the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia versus the UAE, are there any different regulatory or commercial strategies? For example, navigating the clinical side of things, because obviously you need the healthcare, connections, and it's always good to have an advisor who has a background in healthcare. Looking at the SFDA, the Saudi Food Drug Administration in Saudi, versus MOHAP, the Ministry of Health and Prevention in the UAE, how crucial is it actually in appointing a local representative to help you out, and somebody really embedded in the local community?
I think, when it comes to regulation, of course, Saudi FDA is well established. It's still building something, but nevertheless, they are in a way ahead of the regulatory game, because they really do more assessments, while the UAE Ministry of Health so far, we now have this new EDE, this new Emirates Drug Establishment, which will hopefully catch up. But so far, when it comes to regulatory, most of the things went through the Ministry of Health, and they fully relied on FDA and other big regulatory authorities. So it was not really an ambition which has changed to look at things yourself. At the same time, I feel navigating the regulatory environment, doing the right moves, it's very beneficial to have a local advisor, somebody who knows the local ecosystem. When it comes to healthcare, I think Saudi is much more government-led than the UAE. There are many more private hospitals in the UAE. In particular, Dubai is, of course, most of it is private. So there's also a kind of different landscape when it comes to ownership and shareholding of the healthcare environment. But I think for regulatory, it's always helpful to have somebody who understands the local ecosystem.
For those, by the way, who are not aware, the UAE is we are a private health insurance model, so I'm more likely to get healthcare quicker in the UAE than it is compared to the UK, where I'm waiting for a GP appointment. Saudi, it varies. It's private health insurance for expats. The government, the same in the UAE, government covers healthcare for citizens, but it is, majority private healthcare insurance, which I feel is I know insurers get a bad rep, but at the same time, it almost helps in technology and acceleration, I guess, because there's more openness and more time for entities to innovate. Is that correct? So when it comes to the GCC first strategy, right? So we've got a company now; they're ready to enter. I know who you're going to choose, but is it choose one market within the GCC and dominate that? Or is it, no, you can choose several at the same time? What would be your advice without being biased?
It honestly depends on the product. But, as someone who also, have started a company a few years ago, I think the most important thing about a company is people. Right, so where is it easier to hire people, or where can you find, let's say, better people easier? And Dubai does win that, and compared to the other GCC countries. So I would start there. I'd rather have someone good who can drive the business or who can manage my business, because if I'm from Malta or somewhere else, I can't be there, so I need someone who understands what I'm offering and can run the show, basically.
So don't spread yourself too thin, which is actually, to be fair, our side of things, we do see that. We see when companies enter and they just want to focus on the entire GCC at the same time, it gets a little tricky, whereas when they go in with UAE mindset, KSA mindsets, and focus on that for a while, it then becomes easier because their connections get stronger as well. And everybody wants to help each other anyway. Dirk, is that the same?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, there are, of course, several criteria. One is market size. I mean, you would start with the biggest or second biggest, which is the UAE. Then the other thing is support and flexibility. I'm probably both of us biased in a way. I think UAE is a little bit ahead. But it makes sense to start in one of the bigger markets. And I think we consider UAE as a launch pad because you have a lot of things that you don't have in the other markets. So starting one of the very small markets doesn't also make much sense. So I think UAE is a good way to start because I think a little bit also clearer in terms of smaller, not that complex, but yeah. But I would not, I think it gives the same recommendation already. Starting in all the GCC countries at the same time doesn't make sense. They're too different in a way to try to do all of them. In particular for a startup having limited resources, I don't think it makes sense to start across the whole region right away.
Yes, but also, there are companies that, for example, can do well in a tender business. And Saudi Arabia has one of the very large tenders that they do. So if you do win a tender in Saudi Arabia, by all means, start there. That's not wrong.
So let's talk about the money. Dirk, what is the funding landscape really like? I mean, the Series A gap for MedTech. Is there ample capital from VCs, family offices? I know a bit of a trend at the moment in the UAE specifically, sovereign funds. What makes a non-GCC or a foreign startup investable for a MENA-based investor?
I think first of all, and Marwan already highlighted, you have to understand in a way the big sovereign wealth funds like Mubadala, like ADQ, others that everybody knows, they have a totally different strategy and different ticket size and also different stage of companies. So they do big investments. I mean, Mubadala have a huge life sciences team only doing investments in life sciences, but a totally different company. It's not Series A, it's maybe a fund of 20 Series A companies, but so that's something. Investable, first of all, I think they should have a relationship with the region, localized in a way, which we discussed already. So most of the funds, family offices wouldn't invest in some company being abroad, no relationship to the region. And one of the reasons for this Saydalah fund is to really close this Series A gap. So helping family offices, bringing knowledge, bringing experts, bringing infrastructure around Series A to make them investable, to minimize the risk, but also educate them in terms of this is the risk you need to take, but the rewards are very high. But I think we have a lot of money in the region, but from our Series A and life sciences perspective, it's allocated to different areas. I think it's really important to create trust. And then I think there's a tendency for co-investment. So if you bring one family office who are keen to invest, you usually get more than one because they tend to co-invest. So sometimes really the first one is the most important, like any investment story. I think if you have the first VC anywhere in the world, the others will follow. It's the same in the region. And probably you have to add from your experience as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think family offices prior to COVID didn't really put any sizable investment in healthcare, but COVID was really a wake-up call, and it was also a showcase that innovation can save lives. So I've seen a lot of family offices wanting to get into healthcare, wanting to do something, and that's it's a great time to be in the life sciences and healthcare sector, because you now have not only the very large investors and the very small ones, but also people who are looking at a ticket size of $5 to $10 million. which was not the case 6 years ago.
And the right advice is crucial, and I think you both have that in common, because Dirk, with your healthcare background and the people on your team, sometimes family offices don't understand the potential of a startup until, as a healthcare specialist, you're going, no, this is really, this is really good. This is what we need to do. And I feel family offices are paying more attention to healthcare and medical care, medtech right now. Marwan, from your side, as a free zone Dubai Science Park, you facilitate connections. For example, a newly landed foreign startup, you can connect them to a major hospital if they wanted to discuss clinical validation, or maybe an academic institution for local R&D, connecting an entrepreneur with that. So it's always turned to the local experts on the ground if you want to do it right. Is that correct?
Correct, yes.
Okay, fabulous. So we're nearly out of time. So to end, and again, once again, thank you to everybody who made it to this last slot. It's not an easy slot, so thank you very much, folks. In 15 seconds, what is your one must-do piece of advice for a MedTech CEO or founder in the audience who wants to enter the GCC within the next 12 months? Who would like to go first? No.
Go to MedTech Summit in Dubai.
Oh, Dylan will be thrilled with that.
I mean, for sure, definitely spend time, network, meet the right people, understand the pathway, what do you need to do, what's the right way to enter the market. So yeah, that's my advice.
Amazing. And to be fair, I have covered MedTech, the Dubai Roadshow the past few years, and they do bring in the right people, and they do really connect you. A lot of VIP guests from the UAE do attend. So if you do want to just find out more, and you know what, sometimes the best question is just coming up to somebody, not pushing your business card in front of them or going, I'm doing this, that, and the other. It's just going, hey, you live here, what is it like? What can you tell me about the population? What can you tell me about the healthcare and medtech industry here? So always be curious. Dirk?
Yeah, so maybe if you don't find the way to Dubai, Abu Dhabi is also an option. That's the first kind of advice. Yeah, but otherwise I agree, localized, understand what you do, what the requirements are, and then I think it can go very well, even in Abu Dhabi.
100%. And, again, we're not sponsored by any events here, but there's MedTech Dubai, there's Arab Health, which is now known as WHX Dubai, there's Abu Dhabi Global Health Week, which is steered by the Department of Health Abu Dhabi. So again, come to these events, and, the core MedTech, I would say, attendees, as in the ones that go every year, we also see them come to these other events, and they truly take an interest. Even Dylan, he comes to the region and he takes an interest in the people and the founders and the ministries and the government, and it's all about really investing time. It's like a relationship. If you're going to make an effort with your partner, it's going to last. If you're just going to ghost them or just talk to them once a year, it's not really a marriage or a relationship. So look at it that way. So finally, in one or two words, what do you think is the biggest trend that will define GCC MedTech in the next 24 months? So, for example, AI diagnostics, genomics, localization, longevity, value-based care. What would you put your, money on?
So like I said, I've seen growth in all, but if I were to choose, I would pick longevity.
Longevity, okay.
Yeah, I was about to say the same. I think longevity is probably the biggest.
But real longevity,
real
right?
Longevity,
not the
based on
you
science,
can be, okay.
based on data, and adding value. I mean, longevity, I agree, is everything. But I think, that's it.
Fabulous. Well, if you're in the longevity business, come to the GCC in the next 24 months. If not, come anyway and check out the region and see what it's about. We get a lot of bad press at times, but we are very friendly people and we are a great community. So once again, thank you for being here. Thank you, Marwan Abdulaziz Janahi, Senior Vice President of Dubai Science Park, Dubai Knowledge Park, Dubai International Academic City. And Dirk, congratulations on your new venture. Where is it? Saydalah Healthcare Angel Investor Network. Congratulations and good luck with the rest of the projects. And MedTech Malta Audience 2025, thank you so much for being here with us.